I want to share with you a Christmas story that says so much to me about the spirit of Christmas and about Canada as a land of hope. When I had the privilege of being our immigration minister, I opened a special program that welcomed about 20,000 people from Iraq who had been victims of an effort at genocide by groups like ISIS. And many of these folks, most were Iraqis from the ancient indigenous Chaldean and Assyrian Christian communities who had been persecuted terribly because of their faith. I was meeting with many of them, and they told us that they wanted to organize a special community Christmas event, but they really didn't have the money to do this properly because they had just arrived as refugees with nothing. So we approached the local Sikh community that has a beautiful tradition of seva, or service, or charity. And one way they express that is through their langar, or free community kitchens, where anybody can come for a free meal. Beautifully, this Sikh temple agreed to set aside their kitchen one day just to prepare a special Christmas feast for the recently arrived Iraqi Christian refugees. So I went down on Christmas Day and worked with volunteers from the Sikh community to create a special dinner. We brought it over to the community center where the Iraqi Chaldean refugees had gathered. I will never forget that during that celebration, these people who had just arrived through unthinkable trauma were experiencing Christmas in freedom and security for the very first time in their lives. And what will always stick with me was the moment when the children from the community got up to sing Christmas carols in the language of Aramaic, which is the language that Jesus spoke, the root language of today's Hebrew. And there was one child who seemed particularly emotional, a young boy of about 8 years of age, who sang with tears running down his face. I asked the Abuna, the priest of the community, why he was so emotional. And he said that that young boy, until that night, had never spoken a word since his arrival in Canada, because he had seen his grandfather killed by ISIS in front of his own eyes. Yet here he was in Canada, feeling safe enough to sing openly and publicly the ancient Christian hymns of his people. What touched me even more was that these children, including that young boy, were wearing crowns symbolizing the crowns of the wise men of the Nativity story, of the Magi, because in the Iraqi tradition, the wise men came from Mesopotamia, from the east, from Iraq. They were the Chaldeans. They were the ancestors of these refugees. And I thought to myself that the Christmas story, in many ways, is about the Magi coming from the east, bearing gifts to honor the newborn child who is, for Christians, a gift to humanity. And I looked at these children wearing the crowns of the Magi and realized that they were a gift to us. So for me, that young boy represents the spirit of Christmas, which is all about the gift. And while that boy came to Canada with nothing but the experience of his own trauma, he is a gift to this country, reminding us never to take for granted the freedoms that we enjoy, that we have fought for, including the freedom of religion that is celebrated by Christians at Christmas time. I know many Albertans have been going through a period of adversity, but we should never lose hope. At Christmas, as we gather with families, we should remember that we have one another. In our families, our local communities, and as a province, all of us should be able to pull together and support one another. One beautiful way to express Christmas as the time of gift giving, is to reach out to those who are least fortunate through our food banks and women's shelters and so many other wonderful charities where people give of themselves to others, like that Sikh community kitchen that gave to that Iraqi refugee community. So at this Christmas time, let us all rededicate ourselves to find ways to give of ourselves to others, to those in need of our support. And let us do so with a heart filled with gratitude for all of the blessings that we enjoy as Albertans and as Canadians. And so at this time of peace, let me wish all of you a very joyful and Merry Christmas and a prosperous 2019.